We're live. It is Rich Lieberman, the Friday Media Pulse. Look, I'm going to cut right to the chase. I've been on the phone, I've been texting, I've been doing a little research and stuff. Occasionally I do try to go out there and get the truth, right? And actually work hard at trying to give you the reasons that you come here. And so look, the big news. You want the bullshit first? I'll give you the bullshit first, and then I'm going to give you the real deal. So when there's a trade, it's called the mouth, and then of course picked up by SF fraudulent SF Gate, the internet arm of the San Francisco Chronicle, which constitutes red burritos and where to get a good popsicle as news for Hearst-owned San Francisco Chronicle. So the big story, Lamont and Tonelli out or leaving. Our last show at The Bone, 107.7 FM, The Bone. Okay. Bullshit. Or better yet, let me just tell you why, folks. And I've been telling you now for months. And this week, I've been telling you, without getting specific with regards to Tom Tolbert and the other schmuck that they got rid of, John Lund. Ladies and gentlemen, they have no money. And even the shows that make money, FM, music, 107.7, The Bone, the last remaining human shows, for the most part, at least on FM, Lamont and Tonelli, which I'm not a big fan of, but they're funny sometimes, or I guess now they were. And they brought money into 107.7 The Bone. In fact, the Bone, basically were subsidizing KNBR, if you can believe that. But look, folks, here's the real story. And this is not a knock on Lamont Tonelli. It's just, the unmitigated bullshit that you guys are reading. These guys were told, basically, guys, we really appreciate you helping us out. This is Cumulus, Jabberwocky management, whatever suits they call it, to Lamont Tonelli. Guys, we have no money. So you guys are one of the few shows that brought in real revenue, which they did. Unfortunately, the vast Cumulus network, including the San Francisco cluster, was not making money. As I keep saying, the chickens have come home to roost. No money, no money, no money, no money, no money. So even their popular shows, even the Vagabond FM show, which did bring in revenue, real revenue, and had people in the studio, and they've suffered along the way, but they still were relatively profitable, believe it or not. And they, as I just said, they were, believe it or not, subsidizing KNBR. And they had to tell them, yes, they had to tell them, Lamont Tonelli, you gotta go. We'll call it a resign. We'll call it a resignation. We'll say all the pretty, peppery, beautiful, kitchenette kind of things, but it's not true, folks. And this is not an indictment on Lamont Tonelli. They put up with it because they got a good severance check. They've been around a long time, successful. I didn't care for Tata Tuesdays and things of that nature, but they had a relatively decent playlist, sense of humor, and I'll give them credit. They survived. And at least they were talented. One of the few duos who had some iota of talent. But the bottom line is the reason why they're leaving, not because they're just calling it quits. They're leaving because they were told to leave. And again, the money chain has been cut and cut and cut. So even when you get into that situation, when you have real successful broadcast shows, duos who are relatively creative, who bring in revenue, not as much as they used to, but enough to where This show paid for a lot of the other blunders. It doesn't matter. The bottom line is still the bottom line. They have to go. And Lamont and Tonelli, those guys were making, according to today's standards, real good money. Probably over a $500,000 between them. One guy, I think, was getting around 300. The other guy may have been getting about two and a half, 250, 200, I should say, 200,000 a year. Not a lot of money, but in today's world, a lot of money. Too much money by Cumulus standards. And when these shows get to a point that they're like swimming in cash, which this show was not, they weren't doing that good, but they made enough revenue and they had a relatively healthy platform in which they had a steady audience, a loyal audience. They had plenty of ad revenue. I shouldn't say plenty, but sustainable, but not enough to interject with reality. And the bottom line, folks, is when you don't have the financial wherewithal, when you're literally have to pay for the energy, for the lights, for the day-to-day operations, the costs associated with those type of issues, then there is no tomorrow. There is a now, and the now dictated by the lovely non-educated radio shit show that is Cumulus. Even then, you have to cut ties. So KMBR, quite different from 1077 The Bone. The Bone was actually making conservative estimates, pretty good sums of money to sustain themselves, but not enough to pay for KMBR's ill-hanging fruit, so to speak. So when you read these headlines today, you read the story about them leaving. They didn't leave on their own volition. They left because they were told to leave. And I'm sure they got good severance checks, whatever they got. And I'm not knocking them. Not my cup of tea. For the most part, didn't care for their humor, but every now and then, they had interesting, somewhat funny bits, and B, they had a really good playlist. I don't know about you, but I listened to Heart from 1976. He's a Magic Man. I liked a few Eagles. Not thrilled with the Eagles of today, but I like some of the 70s hits. And I like, 80s stuff. But just, it was time to say goodbye. And thus, Cumulus, I'm sure they got really good severance checks, did Lamont and Tonelli. That's the reason why they did what they did, and not the bullshit that the trades put out. And this is going to get into another trade. And I'm sure the Chronicle, which they ran this stupid story on SF Gate, folks, it is utter bullshit. They just print out what is put out by the bullshit trades. That's the honest to God truth. One of the reasons, among many, why you come to my site to get the real deal and not the bullshit on SF Gate and other trades. See you in a little bit.